Hey there everyone, I hope you all have been staying safe and welcome back to another look between the lines. In current news, the never-ending election drama is raging on, while coronavirus is forcing new government lockdowns and policies as well as tension for what elected officials are trying to do to stop it. And with all this, there's been a lot of controversy around what's going on in Michigan with its governor, so let's get into it. Start off with, let's go back to Michigan, because right now there's actually a movement to impeach the governor, Gretchen Whitmer. With coronavirus, there's been a lot of ongoing litigation as people have been fighting for the rights to not be locked in and for other rights that they considered constitutional representations of their freedom despite the health risks. Now, legislators have their own power as well, and the governor in Michigan, for example, under the Emergency Management Act, which is part of the Michigan legislature, has 28 days that they can impose an executive order, which means that they can declare a state of emergency and the lockdowns to occur for a full 28 days, which Gretchen did. Now, after the 28-day mark, the governor, by the Emergency Management Act, has to either terminate the emergency shutdown or they have to request an approval that has to be done by a resolution of both houses of the legislature. So, Governor Whitmer did not get that passed through the courts or through the legislature, as Republicans stood in the way and did not approve an extension of the lockdown that had already been going down for 28 days, so this got escalated to the courts because Governor Whitmer did not approve that. Since this is all part of the legislature under the Michigan Emergency Management Act, the fact that the government is denying what the courts have ordered that she has to respect that legislature and her appeal has not gone through, continuation of the lockdowns is creating a lot of tension. The biggest tension is because this is considered an impeachable act, or at least that's what the Republicans are pushing. So with this, you have another fight for impeachment going on in our court system due to a mostly partisan issue. In the governor's own words, what she's hoping for is for everyone to buckle down, get through this hard period in order to prevent an actual stay-at-home order. With everything that legislatures are trying to do, it's all to try and prevent things from getting to a worsened state. And while the methodology may be incorrect, and there will have to be legal consequences because you can't just ignore the law to do what you feel is best, it's something that's interesting to see that what would be considered best for continued lockdown, or at least to come up with a mutual resolution on both parties, unfortunately wasn't possible for Michigan. And that can be said about the rest of our country as well. If you look at the last 4 years of division, it's created a state where it's almost like one side is perpetually going to be against the other. Politics has risen from something you don't talk about to the dinner table to something where people are cutting each other out of their lives over. There are such fundamental differences in ideologies and ways of life and opinions of life that it's just creating a divide that will take a long time to recover if we don't get off of this path. But of course, that takes one side to give, or both sides to be willing to give a little, and as we've seen from the public statements from the Trump administration, who is still fighting for the election results and what's going on with the recounts, that's unlikely to happen right now. Beyond the shutdowns, as the election recounts are still raging on and the legal fights are going on, we're starting to see some open dissension of the election results, as seen in Wayne County. Wayne County is in Michigan, and it's one of the places where Republicans have stood up and said that their Board of Canvass members are refusing to approve the election results. And that's a big deal considering Michigan was one of the hot spots that was widely debated during the course of the election and the voting issues that were coming up from it. Of course, as always on this channel, you're going to hear me ask why. What is there to gain from all of this? Because undermining the democratic process isn't going to get us to where we need to go. If elected officials are saying that the election process is faulty, then everything comes into question to include their own positions of power. And that's something that has already been discussed ad nauseum, yet here we are because it's still in the news today and still ongoing. And so, what is going to be the end of this? Where is this going to go? And that's something that we can only speculate right now because the powers at play are causing movements that's going to shape our entire democracy. And I'd really like to know what your guys' thoughts are on this. What is the end goal of questioning all of the elections when they themselves are elected officials? What is going to be the result of all this and what's going to change? If you have any ideas, post it down in the comments below because I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to talk about it because, after all we're really going to know is what we're going to see on the media, which has been proven time and time again to suit agendas more than covering actual events in the news. And it's not just the news that you need to question. In today's digital age, you hear about hackers, you hear about IP spoofing, and you hear about malware and phishing attempts and all sorts of things that people use to either hurt others or to influence things online behind very anonymous masks. Regardless of where you are in the world, we're all connected through the internet and we're all impacted by the information and people that we meet through it. Back in 2016, there was a lot of talks about how Russia was using internet trolls and internet platforms to influence our election directly and indirectly. Direct interference, of course, would be hacking into our systems and trying to change what is being posted and what is happening as the election was ongoing. Indirectly, there were a lot of trolls that were banned from social media because they were trying to influence people's opinions on both sides with something known as astroturfing. And astroturfing is an entirely different ordeal, so let me sum it up as simply as I can, where it's basically people trying to influence other people through misinformation campaigns. Something happened recently that's not tied to an election, but there was actually a student who attacked an activist couple where, after being looked into, the student turned out to be fake. And not just a fake profile made by someone, but the individual persona was something that was created completely fictitiously and posted online. I'm sure you all have heard the memes, you can be whatever you want to be on the internet, and there are a lot of jokes about what that implies, but it has a bit of scary truth to it, and that is you don't know what you're reading online. You don't know who's posting it, and most of the time, unless it's certified, you really don't know if the information is true or not. And here in 2020, it's not just a VPN where you can put a different spot where your information is going through, or obfuscation of traffic. This is something where you are having people create identities. They're creating actual people, at least in the reader's mind's eye, that they are using to influence hatred, that they're using to push agendas, and they're using to try and shift the minds of the people that they're reaching out to. For better or worse, that is what you get when you're dealing with the internet. And when I grew up, it was not taking candy from strangers, but nowadays, it's don't take information from people or sources that you don't know. Whether it's true or not is up to you, and that's something that usually you can research or let other reputable sources research it for you. And I'm saying that from here at Between the Lines, while we are trying to look past the bias of the news and trying to focus entirely on the events that are happening, question everything you hear and don't be afraid to go and research it. And if we're wrong, tell us about it in the comments and I'll gladly talk about what was the truth after we look into it as well. That is the beauty of having information freely at our fingertips. You don't have to be spoon-fed what to believe. You can question things, or at least you can choose where you can get your information from and which journalists you believe are sticking with journalistic integrity. And I have to emphasize this, if you do find anything that is incorrect or if you find something really interesting, let us know about it in the comments. Let's look into it together and let's talk about what we find. That's the good side about the information age. It never punishes you for asking why. And with all that, all we can do is sit and watch and make sure that we're doing our due diligence, because our voices are our power in any democracy or any free state. However, there's some things that we can't control, because right now, until Joe Biden takes office, Trump is still in office, and there's a lot of speculation that Trump is trying to create international fires so Biden's not going to be able to implement the policies he wants without focusing on putting them all out. And while that's probably a bit more of an extreme opinion, it's something that does have merit online, because Trump's recently ordered a further withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. Our involvement in the Middle East has a lot of pros and cons, and regardless which side of the fence you're on that, one thing is true: us having troops there and then withdrawing them is creating a lot of power vacuums and issues. You can't simply send your military in to interfere with another country's enforcement and fighting terrorists and then just withdraw without there being a power vacuum and collapse that follows. This is just one of many movements that Trump has been doing in the most recent weeks on foreign policy, and it's all going to fall to President Joe Biden when he takes office to clean up. And again, this is not a partisan issue. This is something that is going to have to be reconciled with and dealt with, especially when it comes to the Middle East, who we have been involved with for the past few decades. There's been a lot of history with our involvement with the different countries and regimes of the Middle East, as well as the rest of the world. The United States has a big influence on many different countries on basically every continent. Right or wrong is something we can only speculate, but in my opinion, it's something that's almost become a necessity because we've done it for so long. And so withdrawing troops now, so close to the transfer of leadership to Joe Biden, it's going to create a lot of turmoil that's going to get in the way of other issues. So, as always, let's see what happens. Let's see what goes on over the next day or two, and please leave a comment. Tell us what you think about the world, where it's going, and what's going on with coronavirus and our government. And of course, if there's anything else that you want us to cover or look into, let us know. If you have questions for us, more than happy to help. But most importantly for us, please hit that like button. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and sets us up for the future that we're trying to build with this channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already so you can see when we come out with new content. And with that all said, please stay safe out there and join us next time for another look between the lines. Thank you and take care.